August 17, 2014. In the quiet of the night, as the world slept, a little girl waited for a father who would never come home. Sabrina Limon's young daughter was happy to wait as long as she had to. She bounded from window to window in the family's picturesque Helendale, California home, waiting and watching. She knew that her dad, Robert Limon, would come racing up the driveway at any moment to give her a goodnight kiss, as always. The Limon family was, as their neighbors and friends described them, perfect. The two young children, both under the age of 10, were bright, eager kids who loved their parents. They were church-going, God-fearing, morally minded people whom the community considered themselves blessed to have. The whole family sat up, watching TV as the hours ticked on and on and on. Sabrina's children asked her where Daddy was, and Sabrina assured them he was fine. But deep down, she was growing concerned. When the telephone rang, Sabrina nearly jumped out of her skin. Little did she know that this call would shatter her night. When she picked it up and heard a police officer's voice on the other end of the line, she knew something had happened. Her loving husband, the father of her children, Rob, was gone, taken by a single, cold-blooded shot nearly 85 miles away. Sabrina sobbed to the cop. She asked him who could do this. Why would anyone do this to her husband? The answer wouldn't come for several months. What followed was a descent into darkness, a tale of love turned lethal, where trust and betrayal walked hand in hand. This is the story of Sabrina and Robert Limon, the perfect family, cut down by an imperfect murder. It wasn't long into their relationship when Rob and Sabrina said their vows in front of God and their family. They were going to remain faithful to each other, devoted to their love, and stand by each other forever, for better or for worse. In the audience, as they said their vows, both sides of the aisle were beaming with pride. But beneath the surface, shadows were already forming. Robert Limon was always known as a hard worker. In high school, he maintained excellent grades, pushed himself to success on the football team, and worked a part-time job. But as he neared his senior year, something else captured his attention. Sabrina. A bright-eyed, blonde-haired girl with a bubbly personality, Robert was drawn to her instantly. The two spent long hours together in the rural area of Mojave Valley, Arizona, cementing their relationship over long nights and happy days together. The couple was devoutly religious and shared similar aspirations. They wanted to have a quaint, traditional family life where the woman stayed home and raised the kids. Friends and family agreed from the get-go that Sabrina and Rob were a perfect match. So when their wedding day came, everyone was overwhelmed with joy. Soon, Sabrina and Robert found themselves moving north. After high school, the pair settled in Prescott, Arizona. But when Rob found a job offer in California, he couldn't pass it up. The job would take them to California's high desert, just north of Los Angeles, beyond the San Bernardino and San Gabriel Mountains. They settled in Helendale, California, or Silver Lakes, as it is often known, a desert town with country club communities built up around two sprawling lakes. It was an area with reasonable wealth in an otherwise impoverished area. It was here that Sabrina and Robert began a new, exciting phase of their lives. Robert worked as a responder for the railroad. Whenever anyone working in the high desert was sick or absent, Robert would leave his usual post and take over. These trips could take him hundreds of miles in either direction from his home, which is part of why they settled in the town they did. The two quickly found themselves with a tight-knit group of friends, regular hangouts, and a boat, which they would use to party and relax on the lake. Their friends, known as the Wolf Pack, spent most weekends together, allowing their kids to mingle while they drank and told stories to one another. Rob was deeply loved and respected by everyone who knew him, which is why, when investigators found him shot dead in the middle of the desert down a long, isolated road, they were so confused. The office where Rob had been shot had been destroyed. Drawers were thrown open, papers were strewn about, and laptops were missing. It looked as though it was a robbery gone wrong, but things weren't lining up for investigators. For starters, the remoteness of the location made a robbery highly unlikely unless someone was targeting a specific item. The laptops that were stolen were hardly worth anything, and the most expensive things on site, high-market machinery and vehicles, weren't even touched. It seemed highly unlikely to police that anyone would drive down this road for a quick buck. That being said, the area of Tehachapi, where he was working that fateful day, did have its problems with drug abuse and poverty. They couldn't completely write off an ill-planned robbery done by someone desperate for cash. So they brought in Sabrina for questioning. It was clear to law enforcement that Sabrina was a deeply grieving, struggling woman who was rattled by the death of her husband. She informed them that to her knowledge, Rob had no enemies. Their marriage was going well. There were no affairs, and Rob had never lied to her. Everyone that investigators spoke to backed up Sabrina's claims. Their two closest friends in the wolf pack, Jason and Kelly, spoke with investigators and then helped care for Sabrina in the aftermath. The scene of the crime held little clues at first, leaving investigators stumped. But soon they uncovered a handful of leads. At the scene of the crime, there was a footprint in the dirt that didn't belong to any of the regular workers. And when they checked the cameras, they found who they believed to be the killer. There was only one road in and one road out of the facility. Judging by the time Rob was killed, investigators were able to review the footage and account for every vehicle that drove down the road. Every car belonged to an employee, except for one. This blurry footage of a motorcycle. The white male driver, hidden behind a red bandana in his helmet, was the first lead that investigators had. There was footage of him approaching the facility with what appeared to be a limp. They had him on footage not once but twice. That gave them a vehicle, items of clothing, and a race. If they could match the shoe prints to someone who owned a motorcycle, they may be able to find their suspect. They quickly took a cast of the shoe prints they discovered on the scene and began comparing them to people associated with the facility. That's when they found their first suspect. A local man who frequently walked near the facility checked all the boxes. His shoes matched the prints at the scene, he owned a motorcycle, and he looked similar to the build of the man in the footage. After thinking they were at a complete loss, the investigators felt they were closing in on the truth, but the reality was far more complex. The man who lived near the facility had simply taken a walk in the wrong place around the wrong time. He had a rock-solid alibi for the time that the footage was recorded, taking him off the list of suspects as quickly as he had been added to it. Once more, police were without any leads. The weeks slogged on, and no matter what route law enforcement took, they were hitting dead ends. That is, until about 3 weeks after Rob was killed. Police received a call from Jason, the close friend of Rob and Sabrina. What he told them had them stunned and put a completely new person on their radar that they never would have looked at otherwise. Jason's co-worker, 24-year-old Jonathan Hearn, a man whose presence would turn the Limons' world upside down. Jason disclosed to police that Jonathan had called him and rambled on, stating that he felt terrible about Rob's death and that he was sorry. Jason felt the police deserved to know because the call confused him so much. Jonathan had been a new addition to the wolf pack. He began hanging out with the group just a few months before Rob passed away, and Jason had no idea why Jonathan was apologizing for Rob's death. But he did know one thing, something that law enforcement didn't know, which lead the investigators to the following question. Sabrina and Robert, the picture-perfect, godly couple. What if the perfect marriage was built on secrets? Dark, dangerous secrets. Based on that question, the investigators zoomed in on the wolf pack and found a shocking truth. Sabrina and Robert, the picture-perfect, godly couple, were swingers in an open relationship. It all started in 2008. According to Sabrina and friends' accounts, Rob was looking to spice up their marriage and wanted to open it up. Sabrina was resistant at first, but wanted to please her husband, so she agreed. Very quickly, they began to swing with Jason and Kelly. Reportedly, they would usually have relations all in the same room. But soon, Rob began to branch out and engage in intercourse with Kelly, without Jason or Sabrina being present. The couple had a rule that neither of them could have secret emotional relationships outside of their marriage, and that they had to be transparent about sexual relationships. So while Sabrina was allegedly frustrated and disappointed when Rob would come home and gush about his escapades with Kelly, Rob wasn't technically doing anything they had set rules against. As their relationship progressed, Sabrina allegedly grew more and more withdrawn. Friends later told police that she began drinking excessively, and they were concerned that she had an addiction. It was around this time that she got a part-time job at Costco to spend more time outside of the house. It was once she got that job that she met none other than Jonathan Hearn, a firefighter 11 years her junior. Smitten by her, Jonathan asked Sabrina for her number. She gave it to him, and from there, their relationship grew into one of fiery passion. John had had a relatively sheltered childhood and had had very few romantic relationships. Yet he shared a lot of Sabrina's values. Allegedly, Sabrina and Rob had strayed from their church-going ways, and Sabrina was desperate to return to a religious life. John, a devoutly religious man, was exactly what she was looking for. As Sabrina's love for John grew, her desire to keep the relationship a secret did as well. When Rob discovered texts between her and John, he ordered her to stop the affair. Instead, Sabrina purchased a burner phone and carried on with John, their relationship more intense than ever. When police learned of the complicated open relationship Sabrina and Rob had, they called Sabrina in for another interview. She denied having any relationship with John, though police knew they had been involved with one another for nearly 2 years at the time that Rob died. Without enough solid evidence to prove that Sabrina and John had anything to do with Rob's death, police did the only thing they could do. They put a wiretap on their phones. The conversations that they uncovered were odd, to say the least. The calls between the two were widely romantic, peppered with conversations about God and religion.
I love you so much, Sabrina. You have changed my life and changed my heart.
Soon after the phones were tapped, John told Sabrina, "Hi God, we are on our knees for a reason. We have been dirtbags, we've been sinners, we've been selfish, and we sinned." At another point, John compared their relationship to that of King David and Bathsheba, a comparison that rang much too true to investigators. In the Bible, King David falls madly in love with Bathsheba when he sees her bathing on the roof in the moonlight. Knowing she is married, he orders her husband to the front lines of war, ensuring his death so that he can be with her. For investigators, it was a nail on the head. Within a 4-month span following the murders, the two had exchanged 5,000 texts and calls. Each one gave police a piece of information, and eventually it was enough for them to serve a warrant on John's house. Inside, they found exactly what they were hoping for: a red bandana, clothing that matched that of the motorcyclist in the footage, a motorcycle matching the footage, and boots matching the cast of the footprints at the scene. In addition, law enforcement found receipts that matched a purchase made at a gas station down the road from the scene of the crime on the day it was committed. Both John and Sabrina were taken into custody following the search of John's property. However, Sabrina was soon released. She continued to deny her involvement, as did John. But as John's trial date neared, he could no longer protect Sabrina. John told the police everything, and there was so much more to the case than they were expecting. Sabrina was in on the murder, and John claimed that she was the one who first brought it up. She claimed that Rob would rather be dead than divorced because of their religion. She feared that she would lose the friend group if they divorced, and that she would look like the bad guy. So instead, she wanted him dead, allowing her to look like the grieving wife. At one point, Sabrina had allegedly poisoned banana pudding she made for Rob. Just before he ate it, she panicked and told him to throw it out because the bananas had gone bad. He had been mere minutes away from death, and he had absolutely no idea. With John's full disclosure that Sabrina had been a conspirator in the murder, she was once more picked up and taken to jail. At trial, Sabrina claimed that John had acted alone and was giving false information so he could cut down his own sentence. Her defense team stated that Sabrina had been abused by Rob and that John acted completely on his own accord. After several days, the jury came to a verdict. Ultimately, John was sentenced to 25 years and 4 months in prison under a plea deal for voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder. Sabrina was convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, solicitation of murder, and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 25 years to life, leaving her children without a mother or a father. Hey, armchair detectives, let us know in the comments what you think about this case. Remember to subscribe. If you like this video, then you might be intrigued by the story of the Height family, a wealthy, high-status family whose lives were shattered by a gruesome murder driven by greed, jealousy, and betrayal. The tragic events led to the conviction of a family member, exposing dark secrets behind their polished facade. Keep sleuthing, armchair detectives. Until we meet again.